Hello, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar. I'm Candace Speller. I'm a staff attorney here at Disability Rights North Carolina on the CASE team, which stands for Client Assistance Services and Engagement. And today I'm joined by my wonderful colleagues, Curtis Hill and Erica Miller, who will also be helping with today's presentation. DRNC, Disability Rights North Carolina, is the federally mandated protection and advocacy agency for the state of North Carolina. We are a nonprofit law firm. We handle cases involving disability, discrimination, abuse, and other rights violations. One area that we receive a lot of questions about is SSDI benefits, but that is not the type of law that we practice here at DRNC. It's not within our targets. And so that's why we have enlisted the help of Michael Shea, who is a board certified specialist in Social Security disability law. Mike has successfully represented hundreds of disabled individuals, both children and adults, in a wide range of Social Security, Medicaid, and supplemental security income cases. As a former legal aid nonprofit attorney, he prides himself on continuing to assist disabled and low-income citizens of North Carolina. Just as a note, we will have a Q&A section, so we will be taking questions. We ask that you please put them in the chat. Erica and myself will be monitoring it. Before I let Mike get started, we do have a disclaimer. We just want to let everyone know that this presentation contains general information for educational purposes and should not be construed as legal advice. It's not intended to be a comprehensive statement of the law and may not reflect recent legal developments. If you have specific detailed questions concerning any matter shared in this presentation, or you need specific legal advice, we encourage you to consult with an attorney. Thank you all for being here. And now I'm going to turn it over to Mike.
Cool. Thank you, Candace. I appreciate it. And I appreciate y'all letting me come here today to kind of sit. And there's a few things that I see quite often here in my practice. I'm as Candace said, I'm board certified. This is what I do. I'm a Social Security disability attorney. I've done it for pushing 19 years now. For a long time, I was in the nonprofit sector, so I was exposed to all types of Social Security disability, SSI, Medicaid issues that a lot of private attorneys didn't really handle. Now, since then, 10 years ago, I went into private practice. I run my own firm here in Winston-Salem. I handle Social Security disability, SSI cases all over the state of North Carolina and even outside of the state. As Candace identified, this is just general advice. I am not your lawyer just because you're watching this. Now, if you would like to reach out to me, that is fine. I'm happy to give you some advice or point you in the right direction. I'll give you, let me go ahead and give you my email address, phone number now, and I'll do it again at the end, and I'm sure we can post it along with this as well. My email address is M as in Michael, Shea, S-H-A-Y, law, L-A-W, at outlook.com. So that's mshaylaw at outlook.com. My phone number here at the office is 336-893-5120. That's 336-893-5120. So feel free to reach out if you need some help or need somebody to point you in the right direction. I'm happy to help. But again, this is not a binding attorney-client type of development. This is just me talking about some things that I see on a regular basis and questions I get so often. I also want to give a quick plug for disability rights. They probably don't toot their own horn enough. They do so much for the state of North Carolina as a whole and for the disabled population, adults, children, elderly. I mean, it's amazing just how far their web reaches. They do such good work. They're overworked, underpaid, and unsolicited. If you ever come into the need to donate, they will happily take $5 or $10, or if you win the Mega Millions, then keep them in mind because they need all the support from the community that they can get. They're fantastic advocates. I can't speak highly enough of them. So what I want to talk about today, and I'm going to try to just hit the highlights, but what I want to cover is kind of the disability application process from start to finish. And as you may know by looking online or may have heard, a disability claim can go off in any number of directions. There are some that can wrap up pretty quickly. That's the minority of the cases, unfortunately. Most everybody has to go through this long, complicated disability application, this appeal process. Most of the time, they end up in front of a judge. So I want to generally talk about where a case starts, how you file an application, and then if you're denied, what the appeal process typically looks like. At the very end, before we kind of open it up for questions, there's a couple unique questions or unique topics that I do want to touch on. One of them is called the Ticket to Work program. It's a wonderful program that Social Security offers. Now, this is a little bit outside of the scope of this topic or this discussion because it's not about how to get disability or what the application or appeal is like. The Ticket to Work program is for folks who are getting disability benefits and have a desire to try to return back to work. And there's an actual support system set up in place where Social Security can help with that. So at the very end, I'm going to talk briefly about that. I also want to talk about a very hot topic right now, which is overpayments. I just read a headline yesterday where Social Security probably made their own mistake. It probably wasn't anybody else's fault but Social Security's mistake. They overpaid a bunch of people across the country, and now they're sitting there with their hand out saying, hey, you got to give us that money back. So I want to talk generally about overpayments. Those topics, the ticket to work and the overpayment topic, in and of themselves can be an entire 30-minute discussion. But again, I'm just going to try to narrow those down. So for now, let's talk about applying for disability. There are three main ways to start a disability application. You can apply online through the Social Security website. You can apply in person, where you go to your local Social Security office. You take a number and you do it that way. The third thing you can do is you can do a telephone application. And so let's talk just briefly about those three options. My opinion, and what I've been telling folks really since COVID in 2020. Now here we sit in September of 2023. So we're 3.5 years past the beginning of COVID. But my advice has remained about the same. In my opinion, I think folks are better off applying over the telephone with their local office. And what I'm going to try to do is post a link with this discussion that has a place where if you enter your zip code, it will tell you what your local office is, and here's the phone number to call. So when you go to apply, if you decide to do a telephone application, what will happen is you will call your Social Security field office and you'll say, hey, my name is Mike. I would like to apply for disability. And they'll say, all right, we got you, Mr. Shea. We're not going to take your application right now, but we'll call you back on Thursday at 12:30 on the dot. And by and large, they are very good about calling when they say they're going to call. So that way you can do this application from the comfort of your home, which is, so there's some benefit there. You don't have to travel and find the local office. But the other real benefit, in my opinion, is you have somebody from Social Security on the phone with you. and they're actually inputting this information into the administration's system. And I think that's important. I'll tell you why in just a second. The telephone interview usually lasts 20 or 30 minutes. When it's done, the hard part for you is over. I mean, you have successfully applied for disability or for SSI benefits. A lot of folks come to my office and they say, Mr. Shea, I started an application online. I didn't know what it was asking me. I don't even know if I turned it in, or if I did turn it in, I don't know if it was complete. And that's my hesitation with advising folks to apply online. I mean, in theory, it's an okay way, but you are held, it's just you doing this application. I mean, sometimes you can get a lawyer to help you out. Sometimes I've helped folks out apply online, but it's just you working through this somewhat complicated page after page after page of just putting information in. And if you don't check a box, or if you don't click on something, the fear is you can inadvertently set your application off on a path going one way when ideally it should have gone the other way. They hold you to the same standard they would anybody else. And I'm not trying to scare you, and I'm not trying to say don't do it. I just want you to know, if you're going to apply online, take your time, read the instructions, be thorough. You can save your progress. If you start online and you feel like this is getting too much, you can actually save your progress. They give you a passcode to log back in. So it's better safe than sorry. Don't just try to rush through it. The last option, you can always go in person. That's tough because sometimes you end up taking a number, you wait around for an hour or two, they call your number at the local office. You go up there, you say, hey, I want to apply. And they say, all right, well, we need this, 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 and this. And you don't have any of that stuff. And so, again, going back to my general thought, my opinion is the telephone application, the telephone interview is probably the best way for most folks to apply for disability right now. And that could change, but that's for right now. The general information that you need when you apply for disability, whether it's in person, whether it's on the phone, or whether it's you're doing it by yourself online. I mean, some of it you just know. How old are you? Where were you born? All your identifying information. They usually ask information about your marital status. Do you have any kids? Do you have any adult kids? Do you have any minor children? They'll ask, have you ever served in the military? Have you, they'll ask about your work history going back about 15 years. Now, if you're 55, they don't really care about the lemonade stand you had when you were 14 years old. But what they do want to know is, where have you worked in the past 15 years or so? And so before you think about applying for disability, you may want to make some notes. Like, okay, I worked at Bojangles for 2 years. I worked at, McDonald's. I worked at the hosiery, whatever. The more detail, the better. But if you don't know the exact dates of this stuff, don't let that discourage you. You can still apply, whether you know how long you worked at a certain place or when did you stop working at a certain place. That's not the end of the world. So don't let that be a issue. Self-employment, I've kind of talked about that in another presentation I did with disability rights, but self-employment, they'll ask about that as well. And that can be more complicated than somebody who's just getting a W-2. So again, if you're applying, think about, oh, well, have I worked for myself? Did I run my own, yard maintenance crew? Did I, run my own small business? I mean, make sure you kind of have that information handy before you go to apply for disability. Obviously, they need information about your medical providers. Now, this can be tough. When you go to your doctors, When you go to the hospital, I mean, sometimes you don't even know who you're seeing. It could be a PA, FNP, it could be the doctor herself, it could be who knows. And if you're going to the emergency room, I mean, you're touching many doctors, many medical providers are involved. You know, there's a radiologist, there's the brick and mortar, you know, Wake Forest Baptist Hospital, there's the surgeon, there's the anesthesiologist. They don't expect you to know all that, so don't worry about it. All you know is you went to Wake Forest Baptist Hospital, or I went to Forsyth Medical Center, or I went to Duke over in Durham. That's the type of information that you need. If you have the address, cool. If you know it was Dr. John Smith over at Carolina Orthopedic, that's great. But what's more important is just as much information as you can give them about the office, name, the city that it was in, the hospital name, the location of the hospital. Don't get bogged down trying to remember, oh, well, was my counselor's name Mandy or was it Mindy? They don't really care. If you can kind of point them in the right direction, Social Security on their own will go get your medical records. That's one of the things that you're going to sign or agree to when you're applying for disability, is you're releasing them to go get your medical records. That means you don't have to do it on your own. Now, here's a warning, and I'll give a couple of these. Social Security, while well-intended, and is supposed to go get these records. Now, oftentimes they try and they're unsuccessful, and they kind of stop there. So sometimes, whether you're doing this on your own, or whether you've called myself or another lawyer or whoever, sometimes you got to do some of the heavy lifting for them. And so that's where a lawyer early on can sometimes make or break a case. Now, I tell a lot of my folks, hey, if you want me to jump in at the beginning, that's great. Let's talk about it. We can figure it out. Sometimes I say, look, just go apply. If you're denied, come back and let's talk. It's probably 50-50 on how I do it. And it's very much a case-by-case analysis. So I can't just sit here and say, if you're in this situation, you need a lawyer right off the bat, right when you apply. If you're in this situation, you only need a lawyer if you're denied. There's no hard and fast rules about that. But I just wanted to point that out, that sometimes it may be worth reaching out to a lawyer just for a free consultation and say, hey, do I need somebody right now if I haven't been denied yet, or if I'm just starting to apply? That phone call, that 10-minute conversation, or that email to a lawyer can sometimes, make a big difference. In addition, the other stuff that they really need: your education, your training. Did you go to college? Did you graduate high school? And a lot of times, Mr. Shea, they'll say, Mr. Shea, why are they asking me if I graduated high school? What's that have to do with my disability? What's that have to do with my bad back or my depression or my PTSD? And, I agree. But when Social Security is deciding whether or not somebody's eligible for disability, one of the things they'll look at is your education. The more education you have, oftentimes the administration will use that against you when they're not analyzing your disability case. They'll use your age, right? So they don't hold somebody who's 58 to the same standard they do as somebody who's 24. The 24-year-old is actually held to a higher standard of disability in many instances, not all the time, but in many instances. So the older you get, age 50, age 55, and age 60 are the three magic birthdays. As you start to get older and closer to retirement age, Social Security will oftentimes give you a break. The standard might change a little bit. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying it's a gimme or a slam dunk, but I'm just saying, as you start to hit these magic birthdays, things may get relaxed. The standard may change a little bit. So they're going to know your age, they're going to know your education, and then of course they want to know your work history, because the first thing Social Security is looking at is, well, can Mr. Shea go back to his past work? You know, if I was folding socks at a laundromat, they're going to say, well, can he go back and do that? And so that goes back to what we talked about a few minutes ago. If they're getting a 15-year work history, it's not just because they're interested. No, they need to know that, because that becomes part of their analysis. That becomes part of what they look at. Can they go back and be a waitress? Can they go back and, you know, lay shingles on the roof? So you just have to kind of tell them like, hey, this is the work that I've done. And once they have that, that becomes part of their analysis. And that's important. It doesn't matter if you're, you know, 25 or 60, they are going to look at your work. So you can see why when you're doing an application, if you're doing it online, if you're doing it on your own, it can be a little dicey, because everything that I just ran through in 5 minutes, that all is part of the application. So again, my opinion, get a telephone appointment with your local Social Security office, have that conversation. At the end, if you didn't have everything prepared, that's no big deal. They'll still do your application and they'll say, all right, well, get us this information. One of the most common things after you do your application, usually you'll get a couple follow-up questionnaires. They'll want to ask you about your day. Some of the questions are pretty ridiculous, in my opinion. They'll ask you, do you have any pets? And if you say yes, they'll say, well, do you take care of your pets? And you'll say, of course I take care of my pets. And then they'll say, well, tell us about how you take care of your pets. And you think about it, again, what's that have to do with somebody's bipolar disorder or somebody's lumbar cervical spine issues? They're trying to just figure out what a day in your life is like. And there are some things that you can do to kind of help your case out. You have to be open, honest. You want to be clear and concise. But when you're kind of going through these forms, these questionnaires, if in the back of your mind, something feels funny, or you got questions, or you're feeling overwhelmed, or there's just a bunch of red flags going up and you don't know if you're doing this right, maybe time to reach out to a lawyer. You know, give a call, shoot an email, find somebody who you trust, who you can talk to about this disability application. This just happened to me. This is Wednesday. So this happened on Monday this week. I had somebody call and they're pretty bad off medically. They got a lot going on. And they have a viable Social Security case. And I told them that. I said, look, you got a good case, but they're still working. And so they are faced with the decision that so many people here in North Carolina are faced with. I am struggling to hang on, but I can't quit. Like, I need this money. I need this job. I got kids. I got a spouse. I'm in debt. You know, I don't have savings to just stop working. And that's the question. That discussion is one of the hardest things that I do as a lawyer when we're talking about whether to apply versus not apply. I mean, the general rule is this: you can turn in a disability application if you're still working. That's the general rule. The problem with that is there are so many exceptions. If you're working a full-time, consistent, day in, day out job, and you're making, for this year, 2023, you're making more than, say, $1,400, somewhere around there on a monthly basis, Social Security is going to say, hey, you are engaged in what's called substantial gainful activity. And because of your work in and of itself, we're not even going to look at your medical problems, just because you got this type of work and it's on a sustained, consistent basis. So that's tough. Now, the other option is if you're working a little part-time job, a couple $100 here, a couple $100 there, Social Security doesn't care too much about that. So my general advice is this: if you're working and you're making good money, I tend to tell folks to hold on as long as they can, right? This isn't a fun activity. Applying for disability, there's very little enjoyment that goes along with this. I love it because I feel like I'm helping people, but from a client standpoint, it is a very frustrating and oftentimes lengthy process. So if you're working, making okay money, maybe you got benefits, I mean, try to hang on as long as you can. But I know for a fact that eventually everybody's body or your mind or whatever starts screaming at you and says, enough is enough. It's not a matter of if or when, but we all come to a time where we just can't anymore. I mean, the hope is for everybody across the country, we can all work, stay healthy, put in our 68 years of whatever and go off into retirement. But that doesn't play out that way in reality for everybody. So eventually your body says, I can't do it anymore, or mentally, emotionally, psychologically, you just get to a point where you're just done. There's no reason to wait to apply. If in your heart of hearts, you cannot work, you are unable to work on a consistent day in, day out basis with any sort of regularity, for any reasons, medically, then you need to apply for disability. Don't wait, right? Don't wait for 3 months. Oh, I got to follow up in 6 months with my orthopedic doctor. No, don't wait for that. Now, the hope is you get better. That's great. You can always tell Social Security thanks, but no thanks. You can file an application right now, September of 2023. And if you start feeling like $1 million in the spring of 2024, it's a simple phone call. You call Social Security, say, hey, I'm good. I don't need any more. I don't want to go through with this application. I don't want to go through with this appeal. But what I don't want you to do is sit around and waste 7 months to go apply. That's 7 months that you could have put towards this potentially lengthy appeal process. Since I said that, and I know I'm speaking fast, let's run through this. What happens after you apply? One of two things. You're either going to get approved or you're going to get denied. Those are the only outcomes. That's one thing I can tell you for certain. You're approved, you're denied. The minority of folks are approved right off the bat. I'm not going to throw out statistics because they ebb and flow, but I do follow them. It does sometimes depend on where you are geographically, which is unfortunate, but it's the minority of folks get approved right off the bat. Most everybody will get a denial letter that says, hey, we looked at your case. Yeah, we think you have these medical problems. We recognize that's unfortunate, but we do think that you can go out there and work. And so the most important thing about a denial notice is that you only have 60 days, 65 if we're being technical, to file an appeal. There are exceptions. I'm not going to waste time talking about when that would be possible, but for what we're doing here today, if you're denied, just know you got 60 days to file an appeal. Either let me do it, let some other lawyer do it, or do it on your own. But don't sit there and say, oh, I got denied last year, Mr. Shea. I can't find the notice, but can you file an appeal? I mean, the answer is generally no. We got to start over. At some point in the process, you may be asked, after you turned in your application, and the ball's rolling, and they're gathering medical records, and you got a lawyer or not, there may be situations where Social Security will send you for what's called a consultative examination. And that's where you go and sit with one of their doctors. There are physical ones, and there are psychological, mental, emotional ones as well. And by and large, it's it's just part of the process. Now, if you have tons of medical records and a medical history and your file is this thick with medical treatments and follow-ups, maybe you don't have to go to a consultative exam, but most of the folks, particularly over the past handful of years, end up going to see a Social Security doctor. There's no cost to you. I'm going to bite my tongue on my personal opinion about these visits. I know for a fact some of them are great. Some of them are fantastic. Some of them end up helping a case tremendously. And I know for a fact that some of them are disinterested. They're just looking to, get you out of the office as quickly as possible. They write a report that's pretty incomplete. It doesn't kill a case. It doesn't make a case unwinnable by any means, but it's just not very helpful one way or the other. And it was kind of a waste of everybody's time. So that can happen at any point in the appeal process. So let's say you've been denied. Might be time to get a lawyer. You don't have to. You know there's 60 days to file an appeal. You can file this appeal, or a lawyer can file an appeal on your behalf. Your case goes to what's called reconsideration. In theory, a new set of eyes is going to look at the initial decision and see whether or not it was correct. Now, the numbers here are pretty low. I mean, there are some folks who get approved at reconsideration at this mid-level appeal, but nowadays they tend to rubber stamp whatever the initial decision was. There's not a thorough review. I mean, they're working hard, I get it, but most of the time, if you're denied at the initial level, you file your reconsideration appeal within 60 days, most of the time you're going to get another denial. At that point, same time limit. You have 60 days to then ask for a hearing in front of an administrative law judge. Here in North Carolina, there are 4 hearing offices: Fayetteville, Greensboro, Raleigh, and Charlotte. Sometimes these things even get filtered outside of the state. I've done cases just recently in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, and Fort Myers, Florida, and Portland, Maine. So your case can kind of end up in strange places once you file an appeal and ask for a hearing with a judge. Again, at this point, it may be worth reaching out to a lawyer if you haven't already, because this is kind of where the rubber hits the road. The hearing in front of an administrative law judge, from a numbers standpoint, is your best chance of winning a disability case from just from a statistical standpoint. I'm not going to talk about the hearing. We can maybe set up another conference for that, or another presentation about that, because it's very interesting. It's my favorite part. This is where a lawyer can be a lawyer. This is where I get to advocate for my clients. This is the first time, oftentimes, where my client is sitting down face-to-face with a decision maker, face-to-face with somebody who is really going to hear their story and listen to them talk about a day in their life. Because up to that point, for the most part, people have been a number, they've been a stack of medical records, but Social Security has looked at them not as a person, but as a case file. And when you're at the hearing, you actually have a human being with a brain, with a heart, who can sit there and ask questions and interact with us. And so that's where we have the best chance of getting you approved. Now, unfortunately, from the initial application until the date you're sitting in front of a Social Security administrative law judge, 18 months, or longer. There's some instances, it depends. Sometimes you can get in front of a judge quicker than 18 months, but that's probably about the statewide and probably the national average. If you win your case at administrative law judge hearing, that's great. Case is over. They do pay you for the whole time you've been waiting. So for the most part, you get a chunk of money for the time you were on the appeal. Now, that's great at the end of the case, but that doesn't really help you get through that 12, 18, 24 months that you were sitting there waiting on your hearing. If you're denied at the administrative law judge level, just want to point out there another appeal. You go to the Appeals Council, which is geographically located in Falls Church, Virginia, just outside of Washington, D.C. No, you do not have to physically go to Falls Church, Virginia, but your file goes there and they will review the judge's decision to see whether or not it was technically correct under the law, under the Social Security regulations. I've had some success at the Appeals Council. The odds are stacked against you, but I've won plenty of Appeals Council cases, so it is a viable option. And believe it or not, if the Appeals Council denies you, then you can go to federal court. Federal court is basically where you file a lawsuit against the Social Security Administration as an entity, and you're asking a federal district court judge to intervene and to look at your case and see whether or not the administration followed their guidelines, followed their regulations, followed their rules. And I mean, at that point, you're 2.5, 3 years after your application date. So you kind of get my point here. Going back to tie this all in, you want to start off on the right foot, because if you're going down a path that could potentially take 2 years away from your life and give you 2 years of headaches and frustration, you want to make sure you're starting off on the right way. And so if that's reaching out to a lawyer, do it. If that's just doing your research, do it. Put in the work. It's what we've been talking about right now are adult cases, but the child cases follow the exact same process. Now, the standard is different a little bit. With adults, they're looking at whether or not somebody can go work because of their medical problems. But the standard with children obviously isn't can they go work. The standard is more about the criteria of their medical impairments and how severe that some of these are, and how they restrict certain domains, how they limit their ability to socialize, how they limit their ability to take care of themselves, how they limit their ability to, learn and acquire information. It's a little more complicated with kids, but it's still the same process, start to finish, the identical process. We're pushing a little over 30 minutes, so let me just check a couple things. I wish I could talk to y'all for hours and hours, because this stuff is, for me, very interesting. Let me finish with those couple of topics I talked about at the very beginning. There's an overpayment and there's a one about ticket to work. So let's start off with the ticket to work. Let's say you've gone through this process. You've been approved. You've been getting your disability benefits for a few years. There's some medical improvement. You start to think or feel like, hey, I think I can get back out there. What I would want you to do is look at the Ticket to Work program. It's for folks ages 18 to 64. So kids can't do it, obviously. Anybody under the age of 64 doesn't need it. Okay, they're a separate category. But any adult age 18 to 64 can get linked up with either vocational rehabilitation or some sort of employment network in their community, in their geographic area. They can develop a plan. Social Security kind of gives its blessing. They can start making progress towards this return to work, whether it's training, whether it's education, whether it's trying to actually do some work. Again, Social Security is part of this. And the benefit of the Ticket to Work program is while you're doing it and you're making progress towards whatever y'all's goal is, Social Security is not going to review your disability. They're not going to review, like typically they'll review everybody every 2, 3, 4 years. I mean, that's kind of on average. They'll review and see if you're still disabled, if you're still eligible for disability benefits. But if you're doing the Ticket to Work program, you kind of get exempted. You're kind of outside of that. So for folks wanting to go back to work, the Ticket to Work program is probably one of the best places to start. There's a lot of successes. Some of my clients from 15 years ago have hit me up and said, "Hey, Mike, I'm out here. I'm feeling great." And it's always good to hear somebody who was successful in getting disability when they needed it, and then matriculating back into employment when they were ready to do that. That's not for everybody, of course, but it is a wonderful option if you're so interested. The other question I've been getting a lot of, and it's been making a lot of headlines, is this overpayment. Again, this is for folks who've been getting disability, getting a monthly check, whether it's disability, whether it's SSI, it can be adults, it can be children even. And they get out of nowhere, they get hit with this letter that says, "Hey, we've overpaid you, and you now owe us $5,000. I've seen some that were $40,000. There are some ways to challenge this. So first of all, what would trigger an overpayment? Well, Social Security says if you haven't changed in your income while you're getting SSI or disability, you got to let us know. And if you didn't, maybe you've been overpaid. If there's a change in your living situation, if there's a change in your marital status, your household makeup, if there's a change in household income sometimes, change in resources. What I mean by resources is like your bank account, or do you own more than one vehicle? I mean, there's so many things that Social Security expects folks to report to them that it becomes overwhelming. And through no fault of their own, oftentimes a client or an individual will be hit with an overpayment, and they'll come to me and they'll say, "Mr. Shea, they say I owe them $15,000. I don't know what I did wrong. I don't think I did anything wrong. I'm confused. I'm overwhelmed. Tell me what to do." And these cases are hard, and these cases are tough, but there's two general approaches. And the good thing about these is these can run concurrently at the same time. So you don't have to pick one or the other. You can do both of these things at the same time. First and foremost, you can file an appeal. 60 days, right? 60 days is like the magic Social Security number. 60 days to file an appeal. You get that notice in the mail, you can file an appeal, okay? That's one option. There's another option that says you can ask for a waiver of overpayment. And the good thing about this waiver of overpayment, no time limit. You can do it anytime you want. There's no 60-day time limit. I've had folks ask for waivers of overpayments years after they got the notice. When you're asking for a waiver, you have to do a couple things. You have to say, "Social Security, it was not my fault that I was overpaid. It was not my fault." And then either I can't afford to pay it back, or this is me paying it back would just be egregiously unfair. I can't go into all the what is fault, what is not fault, but I just want folks to know that when you're asking for an overpayment, you got to show that it wasn't your fault. I mean, when you're asking for a waiver of overpayment, you got to show it wasn't your fault and that you can't afford to pay it back, or just paying it back is unfair. You can go to a hearing on an overpayment issue. It happens all the time. So you can go through the appeal process, just like what I talked about with application, denial, and appeal. Same thing applies to an overpayment. If you ask for an appeal and that appeal gets denied, you have the option to go in front of a judge. And oftentimes judges get it. They understand that if you've done what you're supposed to do, Social Security's messed up somewhere along the way, they've claimed that they've overpaid you $15,000. I mean, you can have some success getting an overpayment eliminated or otherwise reduced at an administrative law judge hearing. I got to stop there just to open it up for some questions. Maybe we can put a pin in that overpayment discussion because I know it is a hot topic right now. So I'll defer. I mean, if there's any cases out there, Curtis or whoever, like, let me know.
All right, Mike, we have a couple questions in our chat. One question is, well, if you're going to the Social Security Administration office, will they give you to call to complete the application? Will they tell you the information that you need to complete the application?
Absolutely. Yes, they will. Not only that, we're going to try to find a way to post it online, or you can go to the
Yeah.
Social Security website itself. There's an actual like little checklist. It's pretty handy. But if not, they'll tell you. So when you call and say, hey, I want to apply, they'll say, all right, we got you. We're going to call you back next week. Make sure you have a list of your work, your medical providers, and the rest of the stuff you know. I mean, you know if you've been married, you know if you got kids. I mean, you know where you live and your birthday and all that stuff. So it's really the work stuff, and it's the 15-year employment history. If you can kind of just prep those, jot that down, so when you're on the phone with them, you at least have something you're looking at, usually you'll be okay.
Okay. Then we have another question that was in the chat. It was about they have a child who is autistic, and is it a correct age to apply for Social Security for a child?
Did they say how old? It doesn't really matter because
Okay, we got two of those different questions. So we've got one that says the child is like 5 years old, son who is autistic, and they want to know, is it true that Social Security can look at the income, look at the parent's income in their tax bracket when they're applying for their child?
Okay, so there's two kind of different issues. I saw somebody pop up with just the number 12, so I'm wondering if this kid, the child
He's
we're
12 years
talking
old.
about,
Mhm.
is 12 years old. And yeah, that's, of course, that's a great age to apply. I've handled kids' cases as young as age, 3 or 4. They're a little more tricky, but once they hit elementary age, middle school age, absolutely. If in autism spectrum disorder is obviously there's a lot that goes into that. The diagnosis in and of itself isn't going to win you a case or anything, but it's how the child is limited when it comes to school, social skills, taking care of themselves, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, general rule, age 12 is absolutely a good time to go apply.
Okay, we've got another hot question.
The parents'
And so,
income thing, let
yes,
me comment on
yeah.
that real quick. So yeah, there's a lot of discussion about parents' income. And what I tell folks is go apply. Don't let parents' income, household income be the deterrent. Now, it may be part of an analysis. They may certainly ask you about it. And at the end of the day, what I want folks to know is if you have a child who is struggling medically and they've been told by counselors, therapists, school, doctor, whoever it is, like, hey, you may want to go look into this option called SSI, go do it. And I know that's not a specific answer, but the general rule is go apply if the income is an issue, if parents' income, household income, grandparents' income. Sometimes you have a child who's living with somebody who's really not even their legal guardian. That's why I'm kind of being a little nervous to say, here's the rule, because it really does depend on the setting. But go apply and Social Security will be able to tell you if it's an issue or not.
All right, we got another question, another quick question. A grandfather has legal custody of his grandson since 2020. He lives in North Carolina, but the custody case was in Virginia. He was told that he can't apply for SSI for his grandson with IDD unless he is legally adopts him. Can you confirm, is this correct?
I don't know. I'd probably need more information. I mean, there's a couple things at issue. The case itself originates wherever the person's living, child or adult, and it follows you wherever you go. I had a client move to Alaska recently. Case started in Forsyth County in Winston-Salem, move to Alaska. But I don't think that's the issue. And I don't think really that's what this individual is talking about. Custody, grandparents, legal guardianship versus, that stuff can be a little tricky and a little messy. My understanding is if somebody is a legal guardian and has all the paperwork, it doesn't matter what state that paperwork is from, they should be able to apply on behalf of the minor child. I hope that answers that.
Okay. All right. As I think we've answered all the questions that are in the chat, Mike. We want to thank you again for the wealth of knowledge that you gave us about the Social Security processes that can also help us inform our community about how to apply for disability. We want to thank you again for taking out your busy schedule, helping folks every day to talk to us about some of the issues with applying for disability. Thank you again for your time.
Absolutely. Thank you. No problem at all.